Hey y'all, I just want to kind of sign on in just a few minutes early so that I can work out. Um, so I can work out some kinks that I always seem to have. All right, where are you? There we go. I always gotta change the privacy settings. For some reason, it only allows me to see them. Changing my audience so that you guys are able to catch the live. Do me a favor, hit share so that maybe someone on your timeline would be blessed by this broadcast today. We are welcoming Survivor Robert Marshall Jr. live today here on Facebook or YouTube. And we're going to dig deep into his life story, you guys. He just recently dropped a documentary about his life story. And I'm excited to have him on today's broadcast. Today, September 17th, is the start and the kickoff start off the season 3 for They Took My Choice Away Survivor Series. And I'm excited about that. I had some setbacks emotionally. I had just lost my cousin, and I was dealing with that loss pretty hard. I was considering doing a video about how short our time is here with our loved ones, because tomorrow isn't promised to us. So I want you guys to do me a favor as you're listening in on a broadcast. Please drop or jot your questions if there's any personal questions that you guys want to ask pertaining to the information that you're getting ready to hear. Trigger warning, it is not going to be a censored episode. I think you all need to know that up front. We're talking about a survivor that had numerous abusers, that he was trafficked. So I really want y'all to be sensitive to and understand that the information that is being brought out is because the survivor is healed. He's ready to tell his story, and in hopes that it does help and minister to the soul of someone that is having a hard time dealing with their own past traumas. A lot of people don't realize that boys are right at the same percentile rate as young girls, if not more, it seems like. So giving an opportunity for him to be able to express, a place for him to express his trauma on this platform that I offer. So I'm going to, now that it is 9 o'clock, you can ask your questions in the box. If you want to inbox me, that's fine. I've got a couple things going on here that I can get your messages and your questions across. This is a live episode for educational purposes, as well as one second. Let me go back to Facebook. Next time I'm gonna have some music in the background. That's not so dry up here. All right. Hope everybody is doing good this evening. Hope you guys are resting, preparing for your day tomorrow. Mm-mm. All right. He should be coming up on shortly. Okay. Let's go. Let's see. Let's go. All right. Mm-hmm. Yep, we are live. Okay, good. So I can see any comments that are listed. All right, so that'll be good. And now we're just waiting on our guest. Let me know who's out there. Drop your name on the comments below, please, so that I know who's here. Let's give it a few minutes. Let me see where we are. All right, he saw my message, so he should be on any second. Shout out to social media, the way they connect people. It's not always a bad thing. Hi, David. How are you? David Torres was a survivor that was our February survivor. He too has has an amazing story to tell. Just released his book called Live or Live. Um, y'all need to check him out too. I constantly, if you guys want to be part of the community, hey Kelly, y'all want to be part of the community, which Kelly and David are. Of They Took My Choice Away. Inbox me and I can send you an invite. Oh, there goes our guest. Let me add him onto the live. Okay, good. Can't quite see him yet. You there, Robert? Oh. All right, let me get back up. It should be on. Just give it a few more minutes, guys. Let's wait for our guest. But that's okay, girl. That is fine. All right, we are welcoming Survivor Robert Marshall Jr. live today. We're going to dig deep into his story after he's just released his documentary of the sexual abuse that he endured at the hands of leadership in the church. And you're like, I know you're probably thinking like, how in the world? But yeah, we're gonna talk about it, and we're gonna right here on this broadcast, because we're not ashamed. Um, it's no longer gonna hold, Robert. So he's ready to tell it, and he's ready to tell it in a way that I hope that you guys are able to receive. So without further ado, let's introduce our guest.
Hey, Nettie, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but we don't see
I
you.
know this is the problem. I've been here. I've been trying to get this doggone. I don't know what it is. I'm not one to blame stuff on the devil, but I have never had a problem with a camera working. And for whatever reason, today this camera is acting foolish.
Mm.
You
Wow.
know,
Yep.
I'm trying to get this thing right. I'm talking about the camera part of my. You know what? There we go. I was
There
trying to be
we
fancy.
go.
I was trying to be
Ah,
fancy, and you know what? I was just trying to be fancy and give the people the best type of camera I have. Let me see. Oh, boom! There it is.
yeah, I
Okay,
see you now.
I forgot now. Oh,
Okay.
I don't often use StreamYard, so that's what it was. So there
Ah,
we go. So what
it
up,
can be
Nettie?
confused. What
Listen,
up?
I want to
Welcome
say I want
again.
to say hello to everyone. Nettie is the best and has been so gracious and has been so kind, and I have been so bogus today. And I want to publicly acknowledge my bogusness and being late. That's never okay. I know what it feels like. And Nettie, I think the world of you, and I'm so grateful that you have allowed me to be on your platform. Thank you so much. I am humbled and I am honored. So please do not take it as I thought this was not worth it.
Yeah.
Literally, sometimes the challenge is, Nettie, most people don't see behind the scenes, and hopefully that's what we'll talk about tonight. Listen, most people don't see behind the scenes. Not only am I pastoring a church full time, but I'm running a nonprofit, I'm running a for profit, I'm also a father and a husband and a lot of other things to a lot of other people. And sometimes, Nettie, like tonight, it just I am, and I one thing I will confess, and my team knows, sometimes I am a bad time management person. And so, because my heart is bigger than my calendar, most of the times I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then my wife is like, bruh, you have XYZ, and these kids got a spelling test tomorrow, and you need to help with these spelling words. And
Mhm.
so, but hold it. So, also just acknowledge my wife. My wife, Jackie, is everything. She is, I married a Latina woman. And so, this is Hispanic Heritage Month, and so shout out to my beautiful Puerto Rican and Mexican woman. I'm thank God for her. But Nettie, thank you so much for allowing me to be on your show, and I'm here for however long you allow me to be on your show tonight. So let's go.
Let's
Let's
go.
go. Thank you once again, Nettie. I can't say enough
Well,
how grateful and gracious and grace filled you have been with today. I actually reached out to Nettie to ask her to allow me to be on the show. So I'll publicly put it out there. And Nettie gracefully said yes. And she's been one of the biggest supporters. And I do not want to dishonor or disrespect your platform, you, or the amazing work that you're doing. I think the world of it. And I'm so honored to be on this show today.
well,
Thank
we
you.
thank you for wanting to even share and even come back. I already told you we were going to have a part two, saying, boom, here it
Listen, well,
is.
I'm here for all the smoke, and Nettie has a way of pulling out all the details that I don't talk about in public. So listen, if y'all want the cheese, I need y'all to go share this because yeah, we're here tonight.
Yes, we are here.
Nettie, I pulled
I'm
out
ready.
my good I pulled out my good microphone, Nettie. So I, I
period. I
haven't pulled
see
it
it.
out for. I have not pulled this out for any other interview. I was like, I'm here with Nettie today, and I want to make sure that the people hear me loud and clear, and I give her the very best that I can at this moment. So,
Amen.
thank you, Nettie.
You're welcome. Listen, we're just gonna get right into it, but even before I do that, I do, and I have always been curious because I have your books
Uh
and
oh.
things like that. But I think it would do a good service to the people in the audience. Can you give us your childhood dynamics before the abuse, before any first encounters of abuse? What was that like? Who was parenting you like at this point? Tell us
See,
about your.
Nettie's about to. She is going there tonight, and I think, and that's okay. It's well deserved. So, Nettie, to be honest, man, you about to get me in trouble. So, Nettie, I grew up in a home where all my childhood wasn't bad. I'm gonna say it like this: all my childhood was not bad. And I don't, and I think sometimes that's what makes it complicated. At
Mhm.
times, is that when you look back, you're like, all of it's not bad. I like it's like every child I had some amazing times. I had some great times. I had some great, things. But I think sometimes, like many survivors, when you look back, sometimes you don't remember all of the good because the narrative of the bad weighs so much. And so I want to just first put this out there with my mother. So when I started, in all honesty, when I started sharing my story, I shared it without my mom really knowing all of the moving pieces of my childhood. So that's number one. I moved because I mentioned that, and since we've had some reconciling conversations over the years, or since I've been telling my story,
Mhm.
her biggest thing was I just didn't know. I just didn't know. I just didn't know. And a lot of people can look at my story and be like, "Where was your mom? Where was your this? Where was your that?" And I would say this: she was living life like every other parent does,
Mhm.
um, who has to balance being black and being of color in America. When you have to work and when you have to get out here and grind. My mother was an entrepreneur too, and so between doing living life and trying to survive and trying to make it right for me, she entrusted me into the hands of people that she thought were good people, or at least would watch out and protect me. But a lot of those people winded up not protecting me. They winded up preying on me. And I'll say this about, and I've never actually, Nettie, I've never talked about my mom publicly ever. And so, believe it or not, I love my mom a lot. And my mother is a preacher, and she is one of the greatest teachers of the word that I know. Matter of fact, she's my preaching coach. And I'll tell everybody that she's my preaching coach. And so, when I started preaching at the age of 5, this is the other dynamics. Now, my life is so I started preaching at the age of 5. My mother was the person who would sit down with me and make me write out all of my sermons. She would say to
Mhm.
me, if you're going to preach, you're not going to get up and embarrass me. You're going to get up and you're not going to be like them. You're going to have to say that you're going to have something to say. And
Mhm.
so my mother is and her name is Dr. Helen Marshall.
Mhm.
Um, she, she, we, no parent, being a parent, and if you've been a parent, right, if you're
I've been a parent.
parenting,
I've been a parent.
like parenting is hard
It is.
as I can't even say no. It's hard as hell. Like it, and especially
Mhm.
when you have your own challenges, your own stuff. And my mom, just to give a little bit of her story, she grew up in the system. My mom, she had her own life challenges. She has her own stuff that she was working through. And while working through her own trauma with the best that she could do and raising kids, and my mother, she experienced, she lost her first husband while she was a young woman as well. And, with somebody that, was not a great man in the second place. And so, life just started life in between. And not to say that what happened to me was, it should have happened. No, it should have never happened. But a lot of times when adults are adulting and life is lifing, right? Sometimes stuff go under the radar, and
Yeah.
sometimes you just miss stuff. And
Yeah.
anybody who's been a parent or who is a parent knows that. You kind of know, you like, as much as you want to protect your kids from everything, just some stuff it goes, and you feel guilty. And I think one of the reasons why I never mention her, because I don't want to ever give the narrative that I blame my mother for what happened in my life. And I want
And
to say
that's
that,
not why I even asked it.
oh no, not you,
Mhm.
because I so I grew up as a church kid. To be honest, to answer your question, I grew up as a church kid, where church was supposed to be a safe space for me, where
Mhm.
people, who were in church were supposed to be a safe space for me. I grew up in a small town called Brunswick, Georgia, and the people that were around me were all church going people. These were not like, for the most part, like bogus, like their families were
Mhm.
not bogus families. They were not like, these were like upstanding or church going family, oriented surroundings.
Mhm.
And so, for me, it started out with family first for me. My first sexual abuse encounter. And to be honest, to answer your question again, Nettie, I don't remember a time outside of being sexually abused. And I just didn't have the words for that. Right. At the age of 4, that's when it started for me, at the age of 4. And this is why I'm so careful even now with my children. I have a 7-year old, a 8-year old, 6-year old, and a 5-year old. Like, sometimes when kids are playing, like, yo, are you checking in on them? Hey, when they are watching movies, are you watching what's going on under the cover? Or if they're having a sleepover, and my kids don't sleep at nobody's house. But when people sleep at my house, no, you're in that bed, you're in this bed, like, and they're like, are you intentional about what this stuff looks like? And so, uh,
We're definitely going to get into that. Yep.
yeah,
That's going to be
it's
part of the topics also, but a little further down. But
yeah.
absolutely.
So yeah, to answer your question, Eddie, and like, this is why I love coming on your show, and that's why I wanted to do the interview with you, because you just got a way of filling out stuff that I've just never talked about. But with my, I don't remember a time.
Mhm.
Now, with all the great things I tell people, that happened in my life, I grew up in like, my surrounding was, I grew up around sensuality, sexuality, and spirituality. It was a three-strand cord, and it was all tied in. I grew up holiness, Pentecostal, like growing up talking in tongues, shouting. I was a church boy. I loved church. I loved church. People will tell you I was known as Little Robert. I was the little preacher. Like, that was my nickname.
Mhm.
And whoever was having church, or wherever there was church, I wanted to be. I was a
Mhm.
musician. I was a singer. I was a praise and worship leader. I was a preacher. Like, I was a kid who
Mhm.
loved God and loved church. That was my outlet. And it was in those spaces that a lot of my abuse happened.
Mhm.
That's where it happened. That's where a lot of people, in my book, if you read any of my books, the first was a cousin of mine.
Mhm.
My cousin, 4 years old, opened himself up at night and said, "Hey, Robert, put your mouth on this." That's when it started, at 4 years old. The next encounter, encounter for me was
The
the
barber.
there you go. You read the book, Nettie. You read the book, Nettie.
I'm a supporter. I know what's going on.
Listen, it was the barber, right? It was the
Mhm.
barber, and being 7 years old when that started, and it wasn't that he was just some random person. We went to a church called Jordan Grove Missionary Baptist Church, and funny thing, the last pastor of that church, not well, the second to the last pastor, he just got convicted of sexual abuse a few years ago, and is still in
Get him
jail.
out of there. Let's
He's
get
still in
him out of
jail.
there. Mhm.
And so, I grew up in, and so the barber who abused me, like, he was the son of one of the church members, who was of my mom's friend, who was somebody that we rode, he was the brother of somebody that I rode bikes with every day. He was the brother of somebody who, we went to school together. It was his older brother who actually got released out of juvenile detention or jail, And I didn't know, and my family didn't know he wasn't supposed to be around kids because it was for sexual abuse. And I wound up being, Lord, put right in the hands of a sexual abuser. And I don't think I've said this publicly, but when I talked to him, my conversation with him when I became an adult, because I looked him up on Facebook and I reached out to him and I asked, because I saw he had kids around my same age. And I asked him, I said, why would you do this? Like, why? And he was the most honest out of anybody. He was like, yo, so, to be honest, he was like, my dad didn't, he thought he was like, you're soft. He's like, so I was light skinned in the South too. I was chubby. And so they were looking at me as, the softer kid. So, the softer kids, he's like, I thought you wanted it. And my dad would ask, why is that, gay boy around here? And not knowing at that
You were
age,
7.
here I know
Wow.
how this. Listen, this I'm just telling this. I'm giving you the full picture, and this is my conversation with him. And he's like, my dad always because we were church people, like we were like my mothers were friends. We went to the Boys and Girls Club together. We went to church together. We went to the same school, and he would cut our hair. He was there cutting our hair, and he was like, and I asked him, he said, I knew you wanted it. And I was 7 years old, right? 7. But then in the same conversation, he said, to be honest, this happened to me too. And he said, I'm not saying it was right, but I believe, to be honest, Nettie, I believe, and I'm not saying it's right, but as I've journeyed to wholeness, I realized, yo, Nettie, he was sick.
Mhm.
You know what I
And
mean?
still could be sick.
And he's incarcerated right now. And what I mean by sick, I believe, I believe he had an illness for real. Like, and I think, I'm not,
You're not condoning it.
I'm not condoning it,
You're not
but
condoning it. You're
on
not
my,
dismissing it.
no, not at all. But
Mhm.
on my journey to wholeness, like, one of the things that I always say, Nettie, is that I live to humanize the lived experiences of male survivors of sexual trauma.
Yes.
And that's even my abusers.
Mhm.
That almost made me cry.
That's real talk.
That's even
That's
my
real talk.
abusers. And I realized, because he's behind bars right now, or last time I checked, he was behind bars, and I don't know what was for. I think it was, whatever. But when he admitted, that had happened to him too. Like, I'm not justifying what he did, but it made me realize, like, no, hurt people hurt people, and I can't expect anything less for somebody who may have mental health challenges, mental health issues, and also it was somebody who was abused himself. And let me just publicly say it, so somebody won't take that as a soundbite. Like, no, like, it was wrong. He shouldn't have did it. And he should be held responsible for his actions. But for my own healing, for my own journey,
Come on.
I've had to, in humanizing his experiences, I like, as abuser, as I have to see him as a person. I have to see him in at the most humanistic level, to say, you know what, he was hurting and broken too and never got help.
That's right.
And
That happens a lot, and that happens to a lot of people. Any abuser that has been abusing, I am almost certain that is their story. It's not something, um, they're born with. This is something that has, sometimes it's perpetual. And so we need to keep that also in mind. I know, um, I know, with now it being in your story, from being 4 now to 7, now that's just 2 abusers, right? So hearing people, or even in the next set of abusers, that was something that they were always saying to you. We just thought you was gay. We just thought you was gay. How how did you deal with that? Is that something that you fed into the lie? Like you bought into the lie because it was constantly being said to you?
To be
How did
honest,
you
Nettie, um, I didn't know what gay was.
right.
I didn't, and here's the thing. I was a chubby
Why would
kid
you?
too. I was a chubby
You
kid
fit.
too. So, and I was from the, like, I was born in Philly. And during that time, being brought up in the South as a
Mhm.
light skinned boy from the city, right? I, like, that was a different narrative, you know?
Mhm.
Um, that was a different narrative. I was different. You know, I love music. I did professional musical theater as a kid.
Mhm.
But I also played football. I also, so I didn't fit the narrative of a traditional Southern kid. I was, my mom, and I'll say this, my mom did a good job at exposing me as much as she could to different types of things. So I also was in the band. I was also in chorus.
Mhm.
I was also like, I did professional musical theater as well. So I wasn't the average black kid. Like I
Mhm.
was also in church. I was articulate. You know, I was not, quote unquote, the hard, thug. I was a little bit more refined. I was a little bit more intellectual, and I was well spoken. Even then, as a kid, I went to an all white school. Like, even living in parts of the hood. Like when we first moved there, um, so I was never around one group of people.
Mhm.
Like my next door neighbors were Caucasian. Like it was like I lived in the middle of everything. My next door neighbor was Cajun, but right down the street was the hood. Like I was in the mix. So I went to school with the hood, in the hood, but so I was a little bit more refined. And for them,
Mhm.
soft meant gay, or not soft, but
Definite.
not fitting the Southern unhealthy, toxic understanding of masculinity and manhood that was
Mhm.
created by men that were broken themselves. Because I didn't fit that bill,
Mm.
you know, then it created, it created an issue, or not for them, not for me, but for them.
Mhm.
And they're the only thing they could write me off, because they were like, different is gay. And so
Mhm.
what happened was, with that, Nettie, I didn't think about gay. I just thought about, at that point, not having my father.
Mhm.
Like, for me, it was about feeling accept. At this point, my abusers taught me that in order for a man to want me to be in his life, that there had to be sexual strings tied to it.
Mm. The
I
lie.
learned that at 7 years old. I learned that at 8 years old, 9 years old. And I didn't have the knowledge or the cognitive ability to to verbally put that into words.
Mm. You how could you?
Like, but now that I have now, but
Mhm.
I didn't have the skill to put that into words,
Mhm.
and so
Mhm.
it just showed through my actions. And I say this all the time too, that it started to become my norm, because my abusers took away my opportunity to choose who I
Mhm.
wanted. It was chosen for me.
Right.
And once your body, and I want to talk about this, and especially with gender fluidity and all the things that people talk about now,
Let's
like
talk.
when your body has been groomed or trained
Mhm.
in something, or it has tasted, it has seen, it has experienced something,
Mhm.
right? And sex is not just physical. Sex is spiritual. Sex is emotional. It is spiritual. It's all those things. It's layers to it. And even I could not, because I wasn't even awakened to these realities yet.
Mhm.
And I did not get the chance to choose. it was chosen for me, but I was left dealing with the pieces, the broken pieces
Yeah.
of somebody else's brokenness.
And I think just to kind of piggyback on that, this is why there are people who have been broken, sexually abused in the way that you have, who are or will eventually have some sort of sexual identity crisis, and then they deal with homosexuality on that homosexuality on that level aspect because they have been groomed into that
And
itself.
and I don't even want to just say homosexuality because, but I think it's sexual brokenness,
Hmm.
identity brokenness, because sometimes it's not homosexuality. Sometimes you have men who have, they may have been, violated by a man, and they go the opposite direction. They are, they are, uh, they are repulsed by the thought of being touched by another man. But so now to prove that they are not, you
Mm-hmm.
know, homosexual or bisexual, they go and they sleep with as many women as they possibly can to prove to themselves that
Hmm.
they are not what their abusers claim them to be. There was a story in the book Echoes about his name was Terrence or Torrance,
Hmm.
in the book where he talks about how his stepfather would literally rape him, like every time his mom go out and would physically penetrate him and speak in his ear and say, "I'm gonna make you like boys. I'm gonna make you like boys." And Torrance to this day, he's never been touched by another man, but his story is, he became a womanizer. He became,
Hmm.
sleeping with married women, couldn't be like just out there because it was the result of his trauma. Now, the thing is, people deal with this differently.
They do.
It manifests in people's lives differently. And that's why I want to just kind of broaden it to sexual brokenness. Now,
Mm.
not just it,
Well, thank you
for
for that.
me,
Yep.
for me, because most men think because they sleep with many women that don't mean they ain't got no problems. Nah, that's not true.
Okay.
Um, I think for me and for many of the men who have experienced sexual abuse, and it's it's brokenness that plays out in different ways,
That's true.
um, and and as a result we form self sabotaging behaviors,
Mm.
and those behaviors help make us sabotage our destiny because we make decisions based upon, or our decisions are influenced by a pain that sometimes we don't have the verbiage or
Hmm.
the freedom or the liberty or the finances to really explain, explore,
Hmm.
or expound upon.
And that's the way it comes out. Yep. What's in you is going to come out. You can't hide. You can't even hide from yourself. It's going to come out, you
Oh,
know?
Nettie, you asking all the questions, Nettie. Listen, Nettie, just you got away, girl. You got away.
Well, so we're going to tread along.
Let's
Um,
let's.
I know you opened up about the preacher in your documentary. And this particular story or this abuser, you're how you tell it, I feel like you're talking about me because I too was sexually abused by a pastor.
Mm,
And so it's very so it's very tender to me. I know that when you were getting ready to release it, you had mentioned that he had threatened you,
yeah,
um, and that you said that you weren't afraid. I too, I am not afraid. I personally haven't addressed him yet. But then you said you said in your in the when you would drop the series, you said, "I'm not afraid, but it's a thing." And when you
yeah,
said that, I felt like, oh, that's what I've been feeling. It's a thing. It's a thing, and
yeah,
that thing is like, it's that it's not being a. I don't know. I feel like I know that I'm healed, right? But it is something that is very sensitive. and it's so sensitive. It's like you really can't put a finger on how to really explain it.
Yeah.
Um, but boy, I could relate to that. Just that in itself. And not even have had, even if I didn't even know your story, I would have just been able to relate to that.
Can I be honest, Nettie?
Mhm.
And I tell you, I'm not scared. But I got to be honest. Every time I see his name
Mhm.
or somebody that has a name, one of his names,
Right.
it's like whoa, like
Mhm.
like one time I was asked to come and speak at a church in Florida, and it was a mutual friend, and I just didn't, what's up, Cass? Like I didn't, um, to be honest, I didn't think anything of it. Of course, was going to come, and when they showed me the flyer, and I saw his face on the flyer, him and I were both supposed to be there, and I lost it, Nettie. I was just like, oh no, no. And I told them, I said, I'm not coming. I'm not showing up. Like y'all don't have to take him off. I will not come. Like, and it's you know, and
Mm.
to be honest, Nettie, like, I'm sorry. To be honest, Nettie, like, and for a lot of my abusers, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. Fear is not the problem. Fear is not the issue. And I think sometimes, and I may address this too. A lot of people ask me why I don't say names, and why I haven't said names. And I want to be very clear why. Number one, I have a wife who's so amazing, who is so kind, who is so grace filled. And I have one of my dearest friends and mentors who I've been rocking with and who's been rocking with me since I was a kid. And both of them said, you know what? Talk about your story.
Mhm.
And but the one thing my wife asked me not to do was to make the platform about getting even.
That's right.
Was not making my platform about getting even. And so not mentioning names and my other friend mentor was just like, Robert, don't even give their name a light of day on the platform that God has given you. Now, that does not mean that I have not gone to the police and I've not mentioned names, but
Come
just
on.
in media spaces, um, those who I love and who are supportive of me have said, Robert, and I've talked to my lawyers. It's not even a legal reason. I've talked to lawyers. It's been because my wife is amazing, and I want to honor her. I want to honor the promise I made to her, and also to my mentor that I love and respect. Um, Not to allow these platforms and these conversations to
Mhm.
become more or a witch hunt trying to find and locate an abuser versus focusing on the story and the
Exactly.
healing.
That's right. That's right.
But what was your question? I know I just muted
No,
off
I was
there.
just saying that I could relate to just that sentence in itself. It's a thing. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. So I every time, I hear his name or, because I haven't confronted him yet, it's still very tender to me as if it happened just
Are you
yesterday.
like are you like me? I get triggered. Some seasons I'm be honest. Like Nettie, sometimes I'm cool and sometimes I am not.
Right.
Sometimes I'm like, yo, call that like I'm about to listen, you won't play with me, you messed up my life, I'm about to mess up yours. And that's the truth. I have those moments where I'm on the ledge and I'm like, you know what, I want to get even.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
I'm
and then I have to remember that, our battles, they belong to God. I have to remember, and these are things that I have to like
I'm
coach
like, screw that.
self through.
Sometimes I'm
I
like,
know
screw
it.
that.
I
I'm
know
like,
it.
no, I'm about to go off.
Yep.
I'm about to just like, I'm going.
I mean, I
And
get upset even knowing that my ex-husband who molested our girls is living his best life in Jamaica. So I'm, it was like, him being expedited to, his home, his home, and knowing that he is doing well, knowing that he is, functioning and making money and not helping. That, yes, that is very triggering. You know what I mean? I didn't make these kids by myself. I didn't have these children by myself. At the very least, you know what I mean? You're living your youth out there, at least, but no, nothing. And so, yeah, it is very triggering. But again,
Yeah.
I have to coach myself. I have to remind myself that even though it makes it look like on the outside he's doing well, or my abuser is doing well, that I cannot be focused on that,
Listen.
because my energy is
Listen.
precious.
Listen. And I feel this, Nettie. I feel this. Like and I'm trying to make up in my mind.
Mhm.
I'm not going to give the people who hurt me the light of day. I'm not going
Mhm.
to allow them to steal anything else from me. Like you stole things or temptations or things I'm fighting through, Nettie.
Mhm.
I get upset because
Mhm.
I want to be like, you know what? If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be dealing with this. I wouldn't be struggling with this, or I wouldn't have to feel this way, or I would
Mhm.
like. But at the end of the day,
Mhm.
me as a Christian, I lean on vengeance is
Mhm.
mine, thus saith the Lord.
I'll say the
Like,
Lord.
like it almost makes me want to cry because
Mhm.
There's times I want to fight. Like I promise you,
I
I might seem very passive, very
I hear
peaceful,
you.
but listen, I got some knuck if you buck in me.
Mhm.
Um, and I realize giving them energy, it takes away from the focus being on helping others
That's
to be
right.
empowered. Why? If I'm fighting you, I'm not helping somebody else. And
That's
like
right.
our guy David,
That's
who's in on
good.
like David, that's on here. Like
Mhm.
I met. If I was focused on the people who hurt me, I would have never met David. I would have never met
Mhm.
Cass. There wouldn't have been a social, a social organization right now that we started that has over 200 men in it from around the world,
Come on.
like all pursuing wholeness. Not to say we couldn't do it, but the narrative would have been different.
That's right.
Like I'm not here to create witch hunts. Like
Mhm.
I'm not. And maybe that's somebody else's thing. And I'm not saying people don't need to be held to justice or brought to justice. I'm not saying that at all. But as a survivor, you have to make up in your mind who you are going to be.
Mhm.
My abusers already took a lot from me. So in me choosing who I decide to be, it's somebody who's going to be focused on healing
That's
and
right.
bringing restoration into people's lives, and not going on wild witch hunts. Because here's the other thing: while I'm trying to chase them, and I'm not, like I said, and if you're pursuing justice, pursue that justice. Get the
Mhm.
justice that you need, whatever that looks like. But for justice, for me, looks like meeting somebody named David and helping him write a book called Live Vivere about helping Hispanic male survivors of sexual trauma find life again. What it looks like
Mhm.
is meeting somebody by the name of Quan White, who was broken and hurting before I met him. And now
Mhm.
he's becoming and forming into this amazing advocate warrior. For me,
He is
justice
amazing.
looks like for me, justice is like meeting somebody by the name of Cass and him finding the freedom and the safe space to express his emotions. Free justice for me looks like meeting somebody by the name of Ronald McCrae and being
Mhm.
able to do life with each other and help each other journey to wholeness. Wholeness, like justice, looks like for me meeting somebody by the name of Christopher Boulder and helping him process through his drama. Justice looks like, and I feel like I could preach right there, but
Yeah.
justice looks like for me meeting these amazing, like meeting somebody by the name of Nolan, and Nolan now being an advocate and a freedom fighter for justice in the social media space.
Mm.
Justice looks like, justice looks like for me going down I could go down the
Yeah.
line, and because there is as much as there was a trail of tears, there's a trail of trophies now.
Mm.
They're that's the trail. So when he says vengeance is mine, thus saith the Lord,
Mhm.
like vengeance is mine. The vengeance for me is seeing that pain that they tried to destroy me with, God using it to bring life, healing, and hope and wholeness to men who maybe never would have experienced it, and not to be arrogant, but if they never met a Robert Marshall. And if
Mm-hmm.
Robert Marshall was too focused on fighting his past, I wouldn't be able to create a brighter future or help create a brighter future for so
Right.
many other hurting and broken men who are now on the journey. None of us are perfect,
Mm-hmm.
but we're pursuing. We're pursuing.
Whew. Yeah, yeah, you could have stayed right there. But we do want to move on. I had a couple of questions that some the audience prior to, because I have been advertising this really heavy. Um, uh, so to understand, to give the audience a moment to understand how the trafficking happened. Could you give a snippet of how it started and how it created a momentum, and who it might have started with, without names? We just discussed we're not going to do names, but how it started to how it builds a momentum of other abusers.
I
Um.
think we have a broken understanding of what trafficking looks like,
Mhm.
or a Hollywood version of what trafficking looks like. Many of us think that trafficking looks like, yo, I'm out and I'm on this dark, road, and somebody snatched me, put me in the truck, and shipped me around the world or
Mhm.
some private island, and now I'm a sex
Right.
slave.
Mhm.
Um, that's not what urban trafficking looks like, and it's not the context of many people who are trafficked or who are pimped or who are put out. And so for me, trafficking looked like, being sexually intimate with um my abusers, me being a kid at this time, and them saying, hey, or bringing me, or like one instance, I was in a car, and I don't think I've ever told this story. I was in this car, and they picked up another guy, and the guy, like, I'm just, in the car not thinking, anything.
Mhm.
And before you know it, a conversation is had about me sexually, and now it's like, hey, I'm gonna bring him in too,
Mhm.
and that's how it starts. And then there was a private network of preachers, and it went from one preacher, oh, well, I'm gonna invite him to come sing or preach at my church, but behind it was sex,
Mhm.
and they're all connected. So it's like, hey, you invite him, and this still happens to this day, Nettie. There are preachers who will invite young men or young women to their church
Mhm.
and say, "Hey, I'm just," and I feel people are gonna get mad at me for this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. There are people who will invite, um, people to their church, or young people or gifts or whatever to their church for the sole purpose of sleeping with them, like for real. And so for me as a young kid, I was a young preacher, and so they would be like, "Hey, so we're going to invite him to your church,"
Mhm.
and then you thinking you just there to preach or minister or sing or do whatever, and really it's a sex setup. And when you say no, well, such and such told me that you did such and such, so why are you acting different now?
Mm.
And after a while, I have to agree with Cass. Like, after a while, you don't see it. And then I didn't see it as grooming. I didn't see it as trafficking. I saw it as I was the one with the problem.
Tell us what was some of the things that went on in your head that at any point did you say to yourself, and you're still young, so I don't expect for you to say that you were able to articulate that this was wrong, or because at this point you have been experiencing sexual abuse at the age of 4, and now you're probably now into your adolescent age, and at any point did you ever feel that you were being wronged?
Um, I think, I think, um, my guys are telling me my mic is really hot tonight.
Your mic went out.
Can you hear me? Can you,
Yep,
hello?
we can hear you.
Okay. The guys are telling me that my mic was really hot, so I had to calm it down just a little
Okay.
bit. Um, so to answer your question, Nettie, can you ask me that question one more time? Because I
Yep.
have to process it in my head again.
At any point, now you're in your young adolescent years, right? Because you've been experiencing, sexual abuse since the age of 4, right? You're in the church now. You're being trafficked in church, with different ministers. Um, at any point, did you ever feel like you were being wronged?
I
When
never felt like I was being wrong. To be honest, I'm gonna be very honest.
Mhm.
I grew up knowing it was sin
Mm,
because I grew up in church. But if this makes sense, I didn't realize it was wrong.
mm,
I had a greater awareness of sin, and more so, I need to repent for this, and not I'm being wrong. It
because I
was
think
more
you all yes, I think you also said that they would tell
the
you
preacher. Yeah, the preacher
wash
started out the
that
original.
residue off.
Yeah, like
Because I'm
you're the
not.
one.
You're the one, right?
You're the one that was wrong. I was the gay one. I was the broken one. I was the confused one.
Mm,
Um, and so I grew up believing that I was the issue, and I had a gay issue according to church and according to them. Um, when really they were the ones sick, and I'd never realized this, Nettie, until I was about 22 years of age. When a mentor of mine, he moved me into his house with his wife because I was really broken at that time,
mhm,
and he gave me a hug. And I remember when the first time he gave me a hug, I was shaking.
mm,
I was shaking because I never knew compassion from a man without sex
mm,
being involved. I was taught by my abusers
mhm,
that in order to be needed, in order to be wanted, or needed to be affirmed, that I had to earn it through sexual conquest, and not realizing that it's natural for every boy to want to be affirmed by his father.
that's
It's
right.
natural, and by the men in his family. It's natural,
Right.
but because I never had it, what hell for me,
Mhm,
and my abusers perverted that. It's natural for every man to want to be, or every boy to want to be hugged, to want to be kissed on the cheek,
mhm,
to want to feel intimacy in a healthy manner from positive men in his life. That's natural.
mhm.
And what they did, knowing that, they took advantage of the fact that I did not know. And I all I wanted to do, Nettie, was to be loved and to be accepted.
I personally, me, I want to know how you even coped with any of it.
I didn't see it as to be honest, I grew up very conflicted and
Mhm,
very confused because I I thought I was the problem. Thought I was the one. But here's the thing, and I want to be clear about this. And this is the part that I don't talk about much, and many survivors don't talk about much. But
mhm,
this is the complexity of men who grow up, and not just men. This is the complexity of people who grow up in church who struggle with sexual identity,
mhm,
like for real, for real. And I'm gonna be straight up. And like, it's how do I serve a God who sees me as wrong, or sees me as dirty, or sees me as a problem? They taught sin to me. Well,
mhm,
the wages of sin of death is the gift of God is eternal. I knew scripture.
Mhm.
But what was developing in me was a result of the same people breaking me.
Call it what it is. Yep.
And not everybody who deals with same sex attractions or sexual identity, but this is the struggle. It's called the struggle, right?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of brothers that's out here that deals with it. They may not ever say it, and I know I'm out here saying it,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of people who grew up in church or who love God and live in that tension
Mhm.
of of these desires that I didn't ask for. Because
Right.
here's the black and white. Like I didn't ask for that.
Mhm.
I didn't sign up for it. I didn't want it. And a lot of men right now who are listening, who have
Mhm.
been abused or grew up with sexual identity issues, like a lot of them, they hate themselves
Mhm.
because they didn't ask for that. And they have a struggle that and some men have killed themselves over, and women too.
Mhm.
Um, they didn't ask for that. That's not something that they signed up for. And it's a part of themselves that they hate. And the church sometimes plays on that hate.
Mhm.
And I often ask myself, how can we hate what God calls wonderfully and fearfully made? God did not break me. Broken people did. And the brokenness and the brokenness of the world. The Bible says this: we were born into sin and shapen in iniquity, meaning that we were all born with a proclivity to sin or
Mhm.
to be broken, or as a
Mhm.
result of our brokenness. Like we all experience something. My mind may, and somebody said it like this: we were all born with a proclivity to be wrong or to be dirty or to be nasty, whatever you adjective. I don't like that, but whatever adjective you want to use. But that is the and I don't want to preach here, but for
Mhm.
me, for me, my conviction, that is where being born again and also being filled with the Spirit of God, He empowers me to live the life that I live. He
Mhm.
empowers me. Like once I got to the root of why I did what I did, or why I was started to make the life choices I did,
Mhm.
it was because I was broken and I was hurting, and I was in need of a father. I was in need of healing, and I was in need of a savior. And for me, Jesus is that savior. And I had healthy, whole men who came in my life who literally began to love the hell out of me. And they weren't concerned about my sexual preference or my sexual identity. No, that was a choice that I made after had after I started getting from up under the weight and the effects of what had happened to me. I finally took my choice back and said, this is who I want to be. This is who I believe God has made me to be. Now, I don't have the skill, I don't have the know-how, and I ain't got the experience to do it on my own. So for me, it was, I need Holy Spirit to help me live this life. I need, and this is why, and to be honest, Nettie, I don't think I've ever said this publicly, but you got me out here. So um I when I started first doing this work, I tried to separate faith from it because I knew that it would be offensive to some, and my endeavor is never to be offensive to anybody knows me. I'm about healing. I'm about wholeness. And the work that I do is for anybody and everybody, regardless of their sexual preference, sexual identity, wherever they are on the LGBTQ and all the every other thing, wherever they are on the spectrum. Hey,
Mhm.
come on, you're a part of our community, and I'm not trying to convert you or change you. I'm
Mhm.
just trying to help you journey to wholeness. But for me and my personal conviction, it is my faith in Jesus that has given me the fuel that I need to continue to live a life that I believe I was chosen and called to live. And
No,
based upon those convictions, like we all have our own convictions, but
that's
based
right.
on my personal conviction, it was it is the working and the finished work of Calvary, knowing that it was Jesus' blood that was shed for me and his spirit that empowers me to live a life that is pleasing unto God, but is also a life that is whole, a life that is full of freedom and joy and peace, and all the rest of the fruits of the spirit. But yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Wow. So, wow, this is really good. I know that you have mentored hundreds of male survivors who have also been sexually abused by other male abusers. But I know that has to be hard for them, um, for a lot of males to even come out and speak. And the fact that you have at least 200 people who are part of your community, and that are all males, to actually come out and be able to be, freely express. Tell the audience what that looks like. I know that it's freeing and all of that, but how do you get the men to be able to be fully exposed, when that's already difficult to do?
Well, I don't like the word come out. I like the word come up.
Come up. Okay.
And the reason why I say words mean everything. Um,
Mhm.
and I like the word come up because these are men that have been beat down. These are men that have been bullied by their own shame, and
Mhm.
that sometimes doesn't even belong to them. Um, it belongs to their abusers. And so, how does this look? This looks, and I want to say this, Nettie.
Mhm.
What you see did not happen overnight.
That's right.
This has been in the working for years. This has been. I'm a firm believer. If you're ever going to do anything, you got to dig deep before you start seeing even some breaking on the mountain. But these men are warriors. These men are I'm gonna say this again, they're warriors. They're
Mhm.
fighters. I believe male survivors are some of the toughest men that exist out in the world because they are constantly fighting themselves. They're fighting their past. They're fighting their pain. They're fighting for their future. They're fighting for their sanity and still choosing to show up in life every day. But what does this look like? This looks like having men who are when they hear and I'm really transparent because I'm the sacrificial lamb and I know it and it's okay. I'm here for it. As long as my wife is good, I'm good. Um, I'm the sacrificial lamb. My story is the backdrop that I use to create a safe space for men to journey to wholeness. And what this looks like is transparency. My team, the entire team, we all embrace transparency and knowing that, listen, like, yo, if we're going to help other men free, when men see men free and men see, I think when they see courage and they see that they're somebody talking about what they've been afraid to talk about, and it provides healing. It provides healing. It provides a safe space, but it also provides them with the freedom they need to journey to wholeness. And what it looks like a bunch of courageous men from around the world who are sick and tired of being beat up by shame, beat up by depression, living in lives of secrecy, who are hurting, who are tired of self-sabotaging behaviors. And they like, yo, I got to get some help.
Mhm.
And I think the help comes in the form of this brotherhood.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not even what you say, it's just being. It's just
Mhm.
having somebody else who can understand your story and your perspective, who can talk your narrative. Like this past week, I had the honor of teaching at the Louisiana State Police Academy. And I was teaching and so I had the honor of teaching every level of law enforcement, like in the state of Louisiana. Right. I still couldn't believe it. I'm still like processing.
What?
I'm still processing this. And
Wow.
like I was talking about humanizing the lived experiences of male survivors of sexual abuse.
Mhm.
How to see men in urban communities beyond just what you see and seeing them in their humanity. and seeing them in their as a result, like sometimes their behaviors are caused by traumatic life experiences
That's right.
and humanizing those experiences so that they can serve and protect them
Mm.
in a more healthier and better way.
We're gonna talk about that on another. Yes, that's amazing, Robert. I don't even know. Is that even unheard of?
Like
Are you the
but to be
first?
honest, I don't know if I'm the first, but I know when I was there, I was telling them like number one, I had never been around that many law enforcement officers in my life, and also in the state of Louisiana, I was like, oh shoot, like I was taken
Jeez.
back. But you know, I'm gonna say this. I know this is kind of off topic, but I think a lot of times the media plays a negative role in the like. No, now there are just some broken relationships between colored people, like people of color and police, and there are some horrific things that happen. And I had the freedom to talk about that
Mm,
while I was there to say, like, you know, there are some like bad like eggs that like there are, and
mhm,
sometimes and there's systems that are
mhm,
bad and broken. But beyond that system, Nettie, this is what I experienced because I never saw this from the law enforcement perspective.
mm,
There were people there who were fathers, mothers, who really got into law enforcement because they wanted to make a difference.
mhm,
And I told them at this conference, I really wish the media was here to see this
mm.
because I don't think the media does a good. I think sometimes there is an agenda of the media to cause division.
Sure.
Um, this is why shows like yours we need to push and fund so we can be the prime time. Um, like Nettie, I saw people who had heart, people who feel with compassion,
Mhm,
and to be honest, the narrative that many people don't know once people are arrested, like, or like they're arrested or whatever, like
mhm,
I noticed a lot of these policemen or prosecutors or whatever, they still have relationships with the people that were in bars or arrested to help them get on their feet. Like some of them really believe in rehabilitation. Some of them, some of them. There are some that are just crazy for sure.
Well, I still wish that there was prison reform in a way that would rehabilitate the inmates that are in there for,
And there is
sexual abuse.
there is definitely corruption and the system is definitely broken. And guess what? Not only would I say that, but a lot of them who were there, they said it too.
Yeah,
And they got involved to be a part of the change.
I love that.
So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. That was,
Yeah,
but it, because I never saw this from the law enforcement perspective, but
at all.
but I had the opportunity to be in those rooms with it.
Mhm.
Like, yo, I don't know if
But this is where God has elevated you in such a way because of all the things that you had to overcome, that you did overcome, and he is no respecter of any person. Like he he's he's just. And just like you said, justice looks like many things to you now. Now that you're seeing the fruits of your labor and the fruits of being able to tell your story, I think that um, that should resonate to anyone. That is actually trying to make a difference in people's lives. Because you could have been selfish. You could have just held on to this, dealt with this, in a way that could have destroyed you. But even though your abuse was in the church by the hands of leadership, let's just not negate that. Let's
Wow,
let's let's,
say
let's stick
that,
right here.
say
That
that.
even though the devil really tried to confuse you into trusting God, even today, uh, in your life, or even as an adult male, that, he tried to really see, he already knew that you were going to be a powerhouse for Christ. He already knew. See, remember, the devil was already in the garden when Adam and Eve were created. So he already knew their purpose and how powerful they were supposed to be. So imagine how he already knows how powerful we are, and how God is very strategic. And if you are willing to answer the call, he can use you. He can use you in such a way that is going to be that demands change. Not so much create so much change, but actually demand it. And so I thank you for answering the call, Robert. You didn't have to do it.
Amen. Amen. You know what, Nettie? I when you realize that some of the things that you go through is not for you,
All right.
you realize that it's to help other people. It
I mean,
brings perspective to your pain. Woo!
come on.
That, that
But
one, dude.
you know what? So now let's talk about forgiveness, because let me tell you something.
That's a work in progress.
Woo! Because I'm gonna tell you how I feel about it. I'm gonna tell you how I feel about it, okay? Because I feel like, do you feel it necessary to forgive them uh, for what they have done, or rather to forgive yourself for holding yourself
Um,
hostage for the countless times that you thought it was your fault?
so I say this: healing is a journey. I say this all the time, and anybody who
Mm-hmm.
knows me, they know that this is my mantra. Healing is a journey. Wholeness is the destination. I say this all the time. Healing is the journey. Wholeness is the destination.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I mean by that is, I'm trying to get this camera right because this went blurry on me. Um, healing is the journey. Wholeness is the destination. Meaning that there is a place. I have to believe that there is a place called wholeness,
Mm-hmm.
and I get to wholeness one healing step at a time. And it is not my job to define what wholeness looks like for individuals,
That's right.
or to even define what healing looks like for them,
Mm-hmm.
but to journey with them along their unique process. Now, for me, I think sometimes in these conversations we jump to forgiveness like real quick
Without the understanding that it's
without without doing
yeah.
the work for our own healing first.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'll say this, like before I can forgive them,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta work on me first. Like, and sometimes, and I'm just be honest, and I might get in trouble for saying this as a pastor. Like, like I think sometimes the church wants us to lie
Mm-hmm.
sometimes and be like, I just forgive them, or I just, and really within our hearts, God know we lying. Like, God know we lying, and we know we lying. And so I think it's twofold. I think a part of this healing journey to wholeness, that part of that is learning how to forgive myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or learning how to process through my own stuff first.
Mm-hmm. I think that is major. I think that should be the only thing that a victim or survivor should have to be concerned about. Allow the abuser to be dealt with God. So release them. Release
And
them in a way. Let them worry about their forgiveness.
I think
You know what I mean?
me taking care of me,
Mm-hmm.
part of that is releasing the offense of what they did to me.
Mm-hmm.
And meaning, how do I do that? When I've gotten me together, or I've gotten healed enough to a place where I can begin to humanize their lived experiences. Because
Mm-hmm.
one of the questions we always want to ask is, why did you do this? We stay on that why. Why? I don't understand why you did this to me.
Right.
Well, and I don't think sometimes we're ready for that question, because the truth is sometimes the why is because they were broken and hurting themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Point blank.
Right.
Was it right? No. But they were hurting and broken themselves. So what does that
Yeah.
mean? What does that leave you? that leaves you with the truth of you are dealing with a hurt and broken individual.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, what are you going to do with that information? Like now, for me as a Christian, that leaves me in the place where I'm left with a choice. What am I going to do with the fact that they were hurting and broken? Am I going to live in that? Because here's the thing, and I say it all the time: unforgiveness is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. When you hold on to stuff, it poisons you from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And abuse has nothing to do with the other person. And people say that. I mean, freedom, forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. It has to do with you. It's releasing yourself from the
Mm-hmm.
cycles of shame, guilt, embarrassment, and offense that was caused by the person or the people that hurt you. I'm not forgiving you because you deserve it. I'm forgiving you because I deserve it.
Mm. Amen.
And forgiveness is me freeing myself from the
Mm-hmm.
bondage that you put on me. And it is placing you in the hands of God. There was a Instagram, there was a reel that I posted a few months ago. It was one of my favorites. It didn't get that many likes, but it was my favorite. It was a sound that said, "I used to try to get even when people when I until I realized God hits a lot harder than I do."
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
that's the
true.
point where I gotta trust God in that, where I'm like, well, God loves me enough to 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 venge or avenge me. And that doesn't mean I don't advocate for myself. That doesn't mean I don't speak up for myself.
Right.
What that means is, listen, I'm like, I'm going to put you into the hands of God. And sometimes people, and I'm a firm believer, like, yo, if part of your journey is going to the police and filing and do it and do it now. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
do that. That you have that right, you have that freedom, and I actually say pursue it. Um, I encourage it. But for me, it looked like the fruit that has come from out of all of this. If I'm mentioning names now, at this point, it becomes about more about them
That's right.
instead of them, the ones that are watching.
Well, I personally feel that it takes a lifetime to heal for such things. It's like a never ending circle of just you're always constantly having to soothe yourself in a way that helps you to be able to deal with things. I know that um, it was important for me to get therapy. It was important for me to get help. It was important for my family to get rehabilitated. I felt like um, I had to take steps to help my children get rehabilitated. And I
Mm,
think we don't do that often. We don't know what to do with the information. And I'm hoping that as people are listening to the broadcast of They Took My Choice Away, that they are getting that information out. And so being the fact that you have had to work at this, would you agree that it also that it will it will take a lifetime to heal from a lot of a lot of the things that you have went through, but more importantly that that's okay, that there's no time limit or
that's why I
restraint.
said healing is a journey,
It
wholeness
is a
is a
journey.
destination. Yeah,
And
healing is a journey, wholeness is a destination, and we all journey to wholeness, one healing
that's
step at a
right.
time. And we're not healing at anybody else's pace but ours.
Right. So how do you safeguard your children as their father, knowing that there is evil that is out there in the world, especially now, even in the church?
Well, here's the thing. Number one, I've learned already at 8, having only been a father for 8 years. There are some things I want to protect my kids from everything,
Hmm.
and I can't. There are certain things in the world that I just and I think this is a hard thing to swallow, but it's very
Hmm.
true. My children have never experienced sexual abuse, but my children have known various levels of pain for various things. That as a parent, I just, if I had it my way, they would have never experienced.
Mhm.
Um, but how do I safeguard my children? Number one,
Mhm.
being present, being present.
I don't
I
know
will
how many
say,
times I have heard even the abuser say how they would look for opportunities with families when the father was absent.
yeah,
So, are y'all hearing? When the
I would
father
say,
had that there was absent of some sort of man in the house. It doesn't have to be a husband, a significant other. It could be an uncle, it could be a brother, it could be, the coach, some sort of male presence, godly male presence in your child's home, or in your child's uh
like,
access, or presence. The presence is what the abusers were
yeah,
looking for with a lack of. So go
I
ahead.
realize the greatest gift that any parent can give to their child is presence.
Mhm.
And I have to give my wife her kudos on that. My
Mhm.
wife keeps me accountable to that.
Okay.
I think sometimes, and sometimes, Nettie, when you're trying to build a life, you're trying to build a brand, you're trying to
Mhm.
build a ministry, you're trying to build everything. Like sometimes your children can get lost in the sauce. Hello,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I'm telling the
Sometimes
audience, y'all
that
need to listen. Listen,
some
he's about
some
to
sometimes your
about to tell
children
us the
can get
truth.
lost. That sometimes your children can get lost in the sauce, and it's true, and it's not intentional, and
Mhm.
it's not by when you have bills and you need to pay bills, and you're like, hey, I got to go out here and get this money. Like you can be, sometimes you can sacrifice your presence to for the sustenance and insurance the house is taken care of. But I have an amazing wife who challenges me sometimes or often. And it was like, Rob, when is the last time you spent time with your kids? When is the last time that you spent time with a specific kid? Or when is or my wife challenging me, and I gotta humble myself sometimes. She'd be
Yeah.
like, hey, this is family time. Do you really need to be on the phone right now? Do you you can't come outside for a few minutes and play basketball? Like you can't and so
Mhm.
and those mumblings, instead of being like, oh, da, 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 like humbling myself and being like, you know what, you're right, and it's made me a better man, and it's made me a better husband, and it's made me a better father. Um,
Yeah.
like I said, there's sometimes people see me and see my life and see the pictures, but they don't see my amazing wife that's behind the scenes, like who is like, yo, like, no, I don't think you need to do that, or you know, what about did you go to your kid's football game?
Mhm.
Or reminding me that no, your son has a football game and you need to be there. And I'm grateful to her for that because
Mhm.
my kids are able to have some. I travel a lot. God
I'm
knows
sure.
I travel a lot. I do a lot. I preach every week. I lecture. I talk all the time. And my wife has to sometimes reel me in and be like, "Yo, bro, um, you've been going every weekend for the last month, 2 months. What are we gonna do fun with the kids?" Like, and I am blessed that I don't have a wife who is just like, what about me? What about me? What about, and when we've been married now for 10 years, and so she gets to that point where she's like, all right, dude, date me. like, like, date me, take me out. I want to do this. I want to do that. And then I'm like, you know what? Hey, I need to drop this. I need to not be the sexual trauma hero at this moment. I need to be a husband to my wife, and she want me to rub her back right now. I'm working on this proposal, but she asked me to rub her feet. So, hey, I need to take this moment and rub her feet. Or right now, one thing she's doing, she's been binge watching Ugly Betty right now. And so, sometimes I'm working, and she's like, "Hey, can you come upstairs and just and work up?" And I know it's a setup. It means, but then she says to me, you know, this is the only time that I can have you to myself, and I'm grateful for it. So
Mhm.
I'm like, and I keep talking about my wife because people don't see her, but
Mhm.
uh, my wife shares me with the world, and this is the other part people don't see.
that's rare to have such a platform at the size and the magnitude that you have, and have somebody supporting you through that. That is so rare. And I think a lot of people also don't know is that you also mentor couples, because even though abused, even though their husbands or their spouses have been abused and have had trauma, abuse from their childhood, you also couple the um I'm
Coach
sorry,
couple. Yeah.
yeah, you explain that a little bit more, because I don't think I'm giving it justice trying to explain what
So
it is that you do.
so I help men I help men are general across the board. Um,
Okay.
and it comes from adverse any man who's experienced adverse childhood and traumatic life experience. So it's not just sexual trauma. It's trauma in general. And so sometimes, you know, we have couples who are on the brink of divorce,
Mhm.
and the man has trauma that he, you know, is afraid or has never dealt with,
Mhm.
and I'm the one that, my wife. Sometimes I bring my wife into it, but I'm the one that helps navigate those waters, through coaching, through mentorship, and through therapy and through counseling. Help them navigate their own trauma so that they can be better fathers. They can be more whole husbands or more whole men for themselves. So yeah, that's another thing that I do. Um, I coach them so that they can become the best versions of themselves, for themselves and for their spouse and for their children.
But also importantly, more importantly too, is that they also are going through trauma.
Yep.
I remember you saying that in our first episode, when you were here last, that we're not even thinking about the trauma that the spouse is going through, because half the time they don't even know what's going on with their spouse.
No, they don't.
And so, we and that's that other cycle that we're talking about, where hurt people are hurting people, and we don't mean to do it, right? Survivors don't mean to do these things, but if they don't know how to um separate what's happened in their past, it's going to come out, and it always most certainly always comes out in a point where you are hurting the person that you love. You don't mean to, but that's just how it comes out. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
I think that part is amazing, and I think people need to know it. That Yeah. So I had a guest not too long after your last appearance, and she had multiple been diagnosed with having multiple personality disorders, and having some psychotic things to go along with that. And she said that it was whoever she's in a relationship. And so I said, well, how does that work? And she said that he has to have his own therapist, being dealing with the relationship that he is in with her. So I was just like, okay. So yeah, it's I think that we need to put the emphasis on, we can't battle some of the things that goes on in our minds, let alone how to even deal with some of the things that enter our mind. And so we do need help, a healthy being able to healthy cultivate a healthy mental state. And sometimes we
yeah.
help with that.
And
So
yeah, and I don't think I've ever said this publicly, but it's you, Nettie. So I'm out here. Um,
Very.
I'm out here. So I, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the effects of the trauma that I still personally deal with. Like,
Okay.
one of the things is I've developed anxiety and
Hmm.
anxiety disorder, and it and my wife sometimes gets has to help me through those moments
Mm.
where my anxiety gets the best of me and I'm nervous. Like, I can't be in large crowds. Um,
Mm.
when I'm overwhelmed, like, my trauma has taught me to see the worst in everything. And so sometimes I have to, like, for instance, I can be in a room and see every in a minute. look it around and see everything that could go wrong in
Mm.
2 minutes, right? And it overwhelms me.
Mhm.
Um, I can sometimes when I'm dealing with just life, like my anxiety kicks in with my kids, and I'm anxious. I get very anxious, and I get very um, agitated very fast at times, and it's my anxiety. And like there are times where I can't seem to like where I'm trying to get a grip of my emotions,
Mhm.
and I there's just this constant sense of something's wrong, or I'm wrong, or I'm
Mhm.
doing something wrong, or always thinking negatively about situations and circumstances, and always thinking that I'm the problem.
Mm.
Like those are,
You
you know,
revert back to being 4, 7,
if
10.
I'm not pleasing somebody enough or meeting their standards, you know, then then I'm the one with the issue. I need to apologize. I need to fix it. I need to um yeah. Those are effects of the trauma that I still have to process it. And sometimes,
Mhm.
sometimes I'm on, I take medication for anxiety
Okay.
because it's a part of my like I've had 9 abusers over my life. And and for some people, they may not like this, but I chose to take the medication for me because I wanted to be the best version that I could be for my children and for my wife.
I don't think
Because
people even understand what trauma can do mentally. In retrospect of you
PTSD.
being a child, you're not even fully developed mentally, and how it stunts so much, and how it, get some education before you judge anybody.
and
So I don't
and
want.
to be honest, I don't care if they judge me or not, but
Mhm.
I think sometimes as a pastor, like people, and I want to say that as a pastor, like
Mhm.
I'm human too, and and what makes me a pastor is not me being perfect; it's me pursuing Christ in the midst of my brokenness and acknowledging my brokenness before this Savior that loves me unconditionally. And until He chooses to heal me from it
Mm.
or totally take away, listen, continuing to pursue Him in the midst of my brokenness, because He's perfect,
How
and
about that?
it's in my weaknesses
Mhm.
that His strength is made
Mm.
perfect in me. Um, my wife and my children, like, and for those that out there who may be dealing with mental health disorders or as a result of just trauma and life, listen,
Mhm.
there's nothing to be ashamed of. Um, and on top of my ADHD, I think that's another thing that developed that I've developed over the years
Mm.
of trying to people please or I think um, it's the anxiety on top of the ADHD. People ask me all the time, how do I do stuff all the time? How do I get stuff? ADHD,
Right.
like
ADHD.
it's my superpower. Like it is a superpower of mine.
Oh
And
man.
um, but anxiety and ADHD can be a heck of a mix at times. And my wife is, she's a G. She's a G, and I will always honor, love, protect her because she gets
That's
me.
awesome.
She gets me. She was there when before this version of Robert that you see. My wife married the depressed version. She
Mm.
married the anxious version. She married the suicidal version of me and stuck
I want
with
something.
me through it.
Mhm.
Um, when pain seems more feasible than life, like she was there
Mhm.
and loved me through it.
Well, thank God she did. Because you became a better man, God knows the help that we need, you know? So he meets us right where we are. Um in light of it being September and it being suicide awareness month, what um could you what words of encouragement could you give to our audience who might be dealing with suicidal thoughts and or have dealt with suicidal thoughts?
Suicidal ideation.
Hmm.
Um, you'll never understand it truly until you've been in some dark places.
Hmm.
And dark places, um, yeah, dark places are very, I want to say this, dark places are very real. They're very real. But they're also, I believe, are sometimes very demonic as well. Um, but this is what I would say is that the pain that feels so great, it won't last always. And sometimes I know for me personally, it felt like it would never end. So I wanted to end to stop the pain and realizing that here's the thing, and this is not me being preachy. Anybody who has worked with me, walked with me, mentored in business or in ministry knows the greatest revelation of my life is knowing that God is with me.
Hmm.
And sometimes being in those dark places, you just feel like you're alone. You feel like nobody cares. You feel like nobody sees you. And it doesn't feel like your life is worth living. So when I gained the understanding that He is with me, like He is with me for real, like it doesn't mean I'm not going to go through crap or I'm not going to feel pain. But I realize I won't have to go through it by myself.
That's right.
And realizing number one, He's not only there. The Bible, one of my favorite scriptures, the scripture says, He is a very help
Hmm.
in the time of trouble. And it was one of my favorite scriptures, so meaning that like when I am at my lowest, when I am when stuff and I am in trouble when stuff is going on around me, He's my help. He's my help. And I want to tell anybody who's even now listening, maybe struggling, suicidal ideation.
Hmm.
Suicide is a permanent solution to temporary problems. You will outlive your problem. You will outlive the pain. You will outlive, let me say it again, you will outlive the pain. And do not allow the pain to rip the potential of your future away.
Hmm.
There are people who love you. And guess what? If they're not in your life, you don't see people in your life right now that love you. Guess what? If you take your life, you will miss out on the future and the possibility of having people in your life that will love you and will walk with you. Um, I
Amen.
understand what it feels like when you feel like life just is hard. And if you're a man, if you're dealing with this, listen, come join our group. Come join the survivor circle. We take survivors and advocates. So you can be an advocate and be in our group, and man, we'll walk with you and we'll do life with you. Which
Mm.
and it creates a safe space because if people underestimate the power of safe spaces, when you know you're in a safe space, you don't mind shedding light on the darkness. Woo.
Mm.
You don't mind shedding light on the darkness, but that happens in community. Healing happens in community.
Hmm.
Shame and hurt happens oftentimes in darkness,
Hmm.
but healing happens in community. Healing community sheds light on the things that are trying to kill you in the dark. Mm.
Listen, if nobody, if nobody takes anything away from what has been said today, I beg uh, viewers, parents, single parents, I charge you to be a better parent to your child. I think I want to go back here. I want to go back to the children because the children are being affected the most now. Um, we're adulting at this point, and at the very least, we're able to, you know what I mean, function, whether or not whether or not we're putting our mental health in the back seat, um, but or not. Just think about your children and all the devastation um,
Mhm.
that they could possibly endure if you don't take the time out to be aware of who is involved in their life, who is taking an interest in your child's life, and for what reason, and for what purpose, and for what, um, question everything. Um, don't leave our children to chance. I believe if there was some positive male influences or presence in your life, Robert, probably none of this would have happened. Um, and we don't want to take light of that. So I don't ever want to end the broadcast where we're not talking about being better parents for our kids. And it's not so much just being better, just being aware. So, um, in your experience, um, if you could just tell us what strange behavior looks like, because after all, you've been groomed and you know what the grooming process is. Let's just kind of go back to that just so that there's an understanding of what we should be looking today in today's day and age on how we should be aware when parenting.
Listen, question everybody.
Mm-hmm.
This is my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has the potential to do something crazy. That's
Mm-hmm.
number one. So because, and I say that because research proves that most abusers are not the kids, or it's not that man that's out in the truck
Right.
with candy.
It's
No,
not always a stranger.
people who it's the stranger. It's not the stranger. It's
Mhm,
the researchers prove it's either a family member or a close, trusted friend of the family.
mhm.
So that's number one. I think number two. So question everybody. Look, everybody's a suspect. Anybody could be. So number two. I would say strange. But you said what? How do we? What was the question? Strange behavior.
Yeah, how do you first of all, we need to educate our children on what strange behavior looks
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Okay,
And
I
so
got
what
you.
are some of those things?
So I got you. Number one,
Mhm,
question everybody. But number two, if you have somebody in your life that is constantly wants to be around your kids outside of your presence, or tries to get your kids outside of, I'm gonna go take them to the park, or I'm gonna go take them to this, or I'm gonna go take them to, they're trying to be that auntie, that uncle, that mentor.
mhm.
Oh, and they try to get your kids out of your presence. It's never, and sometimes you gotta be careful too, because sometimes grooming, they try to gain your trust first.
That's right.
And so you
That's
gotta
right.
be careful. You gotta be discerning. Um, and here's another thing. Watch people who always want to touch your children,
Mhm,
even if it seems innocent. Research proves, one of the books that I love is Dr. Kelly Palfy's book about grooming, and she talks about grooming like the one of the first signs is that the abuser tries to gain the trust of the parent
mhm,
and the kid,
mhm,
and with physical touch
mhm,
in front of the parent, so that when they try to abuse the kid outside of the presence of the parent,
mhm.
that it doesn't seem odd to the
Right.
child.
I
So
don't know how many often times, and me personally, give him a hug, give him a kiss. It's all right. How many times we have done that, thinking, we didn't want our child to be rude. Go ahead. What do you have to say
no,
about that?
no, my kid,
Mhm,
my kid. Mm-mm. Oh, listen, it's like you have to. And Dr. Kelly Palfy in her book and in her teaching, she talks about grooming explicitly, and part of that is gaining the trust of the parent and the kid. And so if you have somebody who's always touching, or they seem real touchy, or always
mhm,
want to hug, or all rubbing their head, like rubbing the top of their head, patting their back, rubbing their shoulder, seems touchy, yeah, that's a red flag.
Okay.
Um, that can be a red flag.
Mhm.
And this is why I first said question everybody because and I say stuff, like, hey, and I teach my kids, like, hey, if somebody, like, even with my daughter, I have a 4 or 5 year old daughter. Uh, I'm sorry, I have a
That's
five
okay.
year.
We're getting ready
Listen,
to wrap up.
I've been preaching, but
That's all right. We're getting ready to
I
wrap
have
up.
number one, because of the work that I do, my children, I teach them about safe touch, like, and their body parts.
Mhm.
And so this is what this is. Like,
Mhm.
this is your penis, this is your vagina, or this is your. We use these words
Right.
because I don't like sometimes if they don't know the proper names for them, like they won't be able to explain what happened
That's
or
right.
what happened. And so I want them to know that, like, and I also teach them what is appropriate behavior for them, even for them as kids,
Mm.
but when
Mm.
they're around other people, so even when they're by themselves,
Mhm.
I teach them what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, like even how they carry themselves, what they wear, what they don't wear, even as kids. Um, but also, and one mentor taught me this: if I don't feel safe around somebody,
Mhm.
if I don't feel safe, or if I don't feel like they're safe people to be around,
Right.
they don't need to be around my kids.
Mhm.
If like, and I can have people around my life because I'm an adult that will never have the opportunity to meet my children. They will never be introduced to my wife, even though I may do business with them, or they may be like, "Oh, you should bring the kids." Nope. Oh, you should. We should get the. This is a telephone conversation picture or relationship.
Mm.
Like, and sometimes it's not even a relationship. Like, and I've also, this is just me. Protect your space and protect your kids' space. If I gotta question you, if I gotta side eye you, if you gotta side eye them, listen, they just don't get access. My home is my safe space, and it is my children's safe space. And folks don't live with me. They can have a sad song, as much as a sad song they want to have. Nah, you're not coming to live with me. And I think we got to watch that too because family members, friends, guilt trip us to
Mhm.
cannot come. No, I'm sorry. I love you. I can do anything else. I try to help you any other way, but you can't live with me. You can't be in my house.
Mm.
No, I'm sorry. You cannot spend the night over my house. I'll put you up in a hotel because it only
Robert,
takes one day and one time.
Robert, my cutoff game to people is so strong. It's so strong. Um, yeah, but I don't have a problem. So I don't have a problem telling people how it is either. I used to be a people pleaser, really, 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 really bad. So when you started touching base on that, I was just like, oh God, he's right up my alley. um, uh, what are those questions that you would ask? And this will be the last question, I promise, because
I'm
my
here.
battery's
I was
getting ready
I,
to
I
die.
was late. I was late, so it's okay. Go ahead. What's up?
So what would be you said to the audience today, ask questions. What kind of questions would you ask if they if strange behavior is present?
What are you doing? Like,
Mm.
like
The up close
what?
and personal, like, what are you
No,
doing?
like what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and or why did you, or like what why are you here? Like, and knowing, like, why, asking why are you here? What's the objective? And
Mm.
sometimes, to be honest, what cuts back on a lot of that is when you learn how to have healthy boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Some certain conversations I don't have to have because
Okay.
I just have healthy boundaries.
Mm.
Like, no, my kids are not coming to your house. No, I don't allow my kids. And not saying stuff doesn't happen, but it when people see you are present, like even with all my kids have very long hair, and so at the beauticians or the barbers, sometimes they're like, just leave them here and just come back and live
Mm-hmm.
here. No, ma'am,
Come
no,
on.
mm-mm, nope. I'm sorry. And sometimes the beauticians, and they may be great people, But I don't know what y'all exposing my kid to. I don't know what y'all saying. I don't know who y'all are outside of my presence. Nah. If my
Mm.
kid is getting their hair braided, guess what? I'm gonna sit here and however we're gonna do a whole shift together.
Mm-hmm. 7 hours, 8 hours.
Hey, listen, it's been a
Mm-hmm.
whole shift, and I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna do because I'm that type of dad.
Yep.
I am, and my wife is that type of mom. And as
I just
me as a
wanted to give our audience some examples because,
like,
sometimes
yeah,
they don't know.
like even when we go on when my children's school goes on when they go on field trips,
Mm-hmm.
we'll chaperone. We will
Mm-hmm.
chaperone, and it's not being helicopter parents. It's being present parents. Like it's being present parents when they have youth outings or they or cousins want to play. Okay, we'll come to play date. They can come, but we all there's a play date for everybody, and we
Mm-hmm.
cut down on people who I can tell you people who stay with my children. I can count them on one hand, and I
Mm-hmm.
still have fingers left. And these are people who are like I have no doubt in my mind. I trust them with my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think your inner circle, like that, 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 and even they are at times vetted. And this is where I find safety. Whenever people are around me and they don't want their actions to be misinterpreted as something, yeah. Like even with me, I'm around children all the time, and I'm always like, hey, like don't hug me, like or when I see people with their parents, or I'm just like, hey, like if I'm in the crowd, I'm like, hey, I'm walking around like don't touch. When people are too friendly too fast, that's a problem. That's a
Mm-hmm.
red flag.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't even want people my presence to even give way of any thought of any type of anything. And any
Mm-hmm.
responsible parent or adult is going to understand it. They're not going to be offended. Like, they're not going to, I don't, if I very, even I'm like, even I'm a pastor, right? So, kids come up and they want to hug and all of that. And I'm like, where's your mama? Where's your
Mm-hmm.
daddy? Where's,
Right.
like, hey, like, no, like, because I respect boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even want them to be so comfortable with coming up and running up on me. Like,
Right.
and even with my own kids, I love my kids, but even in that, you got to have boundaries. And people who, oh, this is a good one. People who get offended at your boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
red flag.
Red flag.
Whew,
Come on.
that was a good one.
Yeah.
People, who, what do you mean?
Right.
I'm like their auntie. What do you mean? I'm their uncle. No, boundaries. Like any responsible parent, they will understand boundaries.
Hmm. So those of you who are out there listening or going to catch the replay, write down some of these nuggets to help you be more aware in parenting. And I think that it is a great tool in safeguarding our children. Robert, first of all, thank you very much for offering your time. I count it a blessing. I thank you so much. It you always have a safe space here, so you got something coming up, down further down the road, and you want to talk about it. The platform is available to you. Um,
Thank you.
and we appreciate you. We love you. We want to see nothing but good things for you to prosper. And big ups to your wife. I love um, how you how you have some high regard for her. It's so necessary for people to see that your partnership is important because it helps you be who you are when that is sound. And my God, the men and women you're going to reach, and then you're going to continue to reach, and the
Yeah.
platforms that you're going to have. So I just
Thank you, Nettie,
plead the
man.
blood of Jesus over all of it, so that hey, no weapon formed against you is going to be able to prosper,
Yeah,
and
Nettie.
whatever setbacks or triggers that you encounter going forward, that God will just um, make it light for you. Um, I don't want to hear you say my anxiety, if I can be as a friend to you. Don't accept what
I like that.
my anxiety, my depression, because they were not yours.
That's
God
good.
didn't give those things,
See,
He didn't give those things to
I
us
listen.
for
I
us
need
to
that.
receive them.
I need that journey. Listen, that's another part of the journey. I ain't even wrote a book on that yet. Like that's that.
Hey,
Listen,
well, let me
that's
help you.
listen. I love that. And let me say this, Nettie. People can support me in our work by supporting these great brothers that are coming out swinging. One of the ones that he's on here right now, and I think you've had him on your show, David Torres. I don't know
Yeah,
if you could put his name up
he
on the
is
screen.
amazing. He is.
I don't
He
I don't
is.
know if you could put your name up his name up on the screen, Nettie, but I had the honor of working with him on his book, um, Live, Revere, and I cannot tell you how important his story is and how powerful. I tell him all the time how powerful his story. He's gonna be a general in this movement. Watch what I
Mm,
say.
I know it.
Um, how powerful his story is as
He
it
and his
relates to
wife.
him and I love both of them. I love both.
Me
I
too.
was there at their book release,
I've
and
had her on the show. I don't know if you
yes,
know that, but I've had her here.
I saw that. Yeah, I
Hmm.
saw that. They are amazing. Like, go get his book, support his book. There are other. There are other. Watch out for Ronald McCrae.
Hmm.
Watch out.
I've had him here on
Watch.
there.
Watch out for Jovan Palmer. Watch out for,
Okay.
watch out for Daquan White. Watch out for
Hmm.
Cass. Watch out for LaDon. These are all, um, watch out for Nolan. These are all men who are a
Hmm.
part of our team, who are committed to making a difference. Watch out, that Christopher Ball. I could literally, somebody's gonna get upset with me because I didn't mention their name, but they, when I tell you, Nettie, the list is so long, and they're all great men doing
Listen, have
great
them inbox me if they
things.
want to be on. I'd love to tell,
Listen,
share their
listen, we're
story.
gonna have all 50 of them on at one time.
Come
Listen,
on,
they're
let's
they're
do
they're
it.
here. But David, I pub him in his book because, like, they're like black, and I'll say this: black men, we're starting in small circles to talk about this.
Hmm.
But man, Nettie, in the Latino culture, whew,
It's
nah. And let me tell you, I've been doing work in the Dominican Republic lately, and and we're getting ready to go to Panama too.
mm,
And I've tried to have these conversations in those countries, but
mm,
let me tell you, it is worse. It is worse. And like, and my Latino brothers, like, who are struggling and who have been abused, that won't ever say a word, that will take it to their grave. Listen, you ain't got to suffer in silence. And this is why I pub and believe in David Torres so much, because there are Latino men who are drinking themselves to an eternal sleep, who are drugging themselves to an eternal sleep, who are committing suicide, like, at crazy rates that, that we don't think about, like, and their self sabotaging behaviors are getting the worst of them, and they're married, and their wives are getting the short end of the stick. They're not,
mhm,
like, I want to, like, David Torres' story is for them, like,
mhm.
David, and I'm talking about him because I'm just so, like, I've imparted and
You're a
given a
proud
lot.
papa.
I've imparted and given a lot to a lot of people, but David, when I tell you, that brother has gotten the best of what I have ever had to offer anybody, and I believe in him 150%. And his wife, they're gonna change the world, and they're gonna turn it
Mhm.
upside down. Watch what I say. But just like him and Daquan and
Yes.
Ronald and LaDon and Nolan and all, watch, they're all coming out with books. They're all Oh, don't let me leave out Marcel Anderson and have you had Marcel Anderson on the show?
I
If
have
you have
not.
not, Marcel's
Mm-mm.
story is bananas. Jay Wallace
Mhm.
on the show. I think you may have had uh, la, 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 la,
I've
uh,
had
he's
I've
in
had
Ohio. Uh,
oh,
man, he's a pastor in Ohio. and I know his name. I just can't think of it off the top of my head.
So I've had
Uh,
Daquan, I've had David, his beautiful wife, and then I've had Ronald McQuay. That's it. Those are
uh,
the three that I've had that are in your camp.
Carl, yeah, Carl. Carl is another one. Oh my, you talking
Okay.
about? Oh man, Carl
Just
is.
hit my inbox with their names and
Listen,
I'll
I
reach
got a
out to them.
when I tell you I got a whole hit of hitters, Rich Griffith, and when I tell you this work has exploded in such a way, Eddie, that it's been like it blows my cast as well. Cast, I don't know if you've had cast on here either.
Mm-mm.
Cast is amazing. Man, when I tell you the list goes on. But anyway,
Wonderful.
I could keep talking.
Listen, I want to give the world an opportunity to see what trauma to triumph looks like. And so we can have our choices taken away from us because we were innocent. We didn't know any better. We couldn't advocate for ourselves, but we are taking our choice back. And that's the example that I want to give to the world today. It's really that simple. So that you are not left alone, that there are examples out there that you know that can help motivate you for your mental health. um that concludes our episode. I am down 2%. I don't know why this charger is not working, but I don't want to get interrupted rudely if that should be the case, so we're going to end here. I'll talk to you off script in just a second, but I want to end here. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for being a support to They Took My Choice Away broadcast. We are now
Mhm.
in season 3. Thank God for that. Um, and I will look for your comments at the replays. Thank you. God bless y'all.